If you're watching Iron Age Instincts, you already know this channel exists for people who don't want watered-down history. You're here for the details that didn't make it into school documentaries. So, before we dive in, hit subscribe right now so you don't miss the deeper side of history most viewers never get exposed to. Because today we're breaking down 9 World War II survival tricks so effective, soldiers were explicitly ordered not to talk about them. The kind of fieldcraft that kept men alive under conditions where mistakes were, well, absolutely fatal. And more importantly, I'll show you how these principles still apply to modern survival, fieldcraft, and preparedness. The first trick was learning the silent language of terrain, because, maps lie, but landscapes don't. World War II scouts and reconnaissance troops were trained to read ground the same way a doctor reads a pulse. They learned to spot unnatural straight lines, sharp edges, disturbed soil, and unnatural colours long before stepping on them. They were told never to look directly at traps or ambush signs, but to scan in wide arcs so their eyes didn't telegraph interest to the enemy. You can apply this today by walking your environment without looking for anything specific. Just let patterns reveal themselves instead of forcing them. The brain, honestly, picks up irregularities naturally when it's not tense. The second trick was using improvised noise discipline that went far beyond simply staying quiet. Soldiers learned to sync their movements with environmental sound cycles, wind gusts, far-off artillery, distant aircraft, anything louder than their footsteps. They also learned to move only when the enemy's natural focus was elsewhere. A modern survivalist can practice this by, walking on varied surfaces while listening for what some call sound spikes. Learn what triggers noise, then train your muscle memory to avoid it. Back in the day, World War II patrols would rehearse until they could cross gravel silently. No small feat, really. The third trick was mastering what was called the water deception method. Men on long-range patrols didn't drink when they were thirsty. Instead, they drank before movement and kept their canteens wrapped in cloth to prevent any clicking or sloshing. Some units even added a thin layer of moss or cloth inside the canteen to absorb those tiny movements of water. And if you've ever moved at night with a sloshing bottle, you know exactly why this mattered. Today, hikers and preppers use similar techniques by filling containers completely and insulating them to remove any air gaps. It's a clever way to stay quiet, and honestly, it just makes sense. The fourth trick was learning how to build heat that looks like no heat at all. In the Second World War, this meant Dakota fire holes, below-ground cook pits, and ember cooking methods that produced almost no smoke. Soldiers were ordered never to reveal these techniques to civilians because, smoke discipline was a battlefield advantage. If you camp or prepare for grid-down life, it's wise to practice subterranean cooking. You dig 2 shafts, connect them with a tunnel, burn dry fuel, and use airflow to keep smoke almost invisible. It's simple, fast, and honestly extremely hard to detect. The fifth trick involved chemical camouflage, not face paint, but scent masking. Many German, Soviet and Japanese units tracked enemies by smell, especially tobacco, oil and soap. Survival manuals ordered soldiers to avoid certain rations before certain missions because, the scent carried downwind. Modern hunters, they still use scent discipline. Strip your gear of any artificial smells, seal up your soaps, and, never store anything scented with your field clothing. The sixth trick was mastering what's called the 30-second shelter rule. When artillery started, you had about 30 seconds to make a life-saving decision. Do you run, drop, or take cover? Veterans learned the pattern of shelling, how long it took after the whistle, how indirect fire lands, and honestly, where those tree bursts tend to occur. You can actually practice modern versions of this by training your decision-making under stress. Give yourself time limits when handling tools, navigating tricky terrain, or, say, solving problems. The point isn't really speed, it's about reducing panic. The seventh trick was learning to make rations last by altering metabolism rather than just rationing food. Special forces units in the war use scheduled micro-meals, eating tiny quantities every set number of hours to keep the body from, panicking into starvation mode. A civilian can actually apply this during long treks or emergency situations. The idea is to portion meals into small timed intervals instead of just eating whenever you feel hungry. This maintains energy and clarity. The eighth trick was using shadow-based concealment instead of object-based concealment. Soldiers learned not to hide behind things, but beside them, right inside the darkest part of their shadow. And honestly, it made them effectively invisible at a distance. You can practice this by noting where the darkest shadow falls around any object during different hours of the day. When you train your eyes to locate the deepest section of shade, your ability to remain unseen increases dramatically. The ninth trick was the silent group movement method, often misattributed to indigenous trackers but widely used in World War II. Units moved like a single organism. No talking, no hand signals unless essential. Every man watched the man in front of him, and subtle body language controlled the entire column. This kept units alive in dense terrain. Practice this with friends or teammates. Move as a group with zero verbal communication. Let tension, posture, and tempo become your communication. These 9 World War II survival tricks weren't gimmicks. They kept men alive in forests, deserts, ruined cities, and frozen plains. And while the context has changed, the principles haven't. Terrain reading, noise control, scent discipline, shadow concealment, micro-rationing, and group movement are skills that belong to anyone who takes preparedness seriously. If you value deep historical survival knowledge like this, make sure you subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, share this video with another history enthusiast, and help keep this level of detail alive. The Prepper Historian.